the fourth thing I've learned being in Bitcoin is that wealth is free time. Like, we think wealth is stuff. We think it's money and all of this, and to some extent it is, but it's ultimately just free time. Because each of us, we have a finite lifespan. So the more free time we have, that is wealth. Tools and capital and money come into the equation because they put us closer in time to satisfying our wants. So for instance, if I want to go from New York to Los Angeles, it's going to take me a long time in these shoes. But if I have a piece of capital, like a car, that's going to put me closer in time to satisfying that want of going from New York to LA. Therefore, that car is capital. To own a car makes me more wealthy, right? Nothing has changed about New York and LA. They're the same distance apart. But if my aim is to travel between the two, capital makes me more wealthy by making me achieve it faster, letting me achieve it faster. A jet would save me even more time, and that's why a jet would make you even more wealthy. So becoming wealthy, it's not necessarily about having the most money or stuff. It's really acquiring the most free time. And this is proportionate to your wants in the world. And so ideally, you're doing this by spending your time working in something that you enjoy, right? This is the thing that everyone desires, to make your passion your profession. This is the ideal reality, where you spend your time working to earn more free time. So the other option, you could also just really lower your wants a lot, right? You could just go be a monk in a monastery and not want anything, and then you'd be wealthy, technically. You'd have a ton of free time. So you don't need money necessarily. And, oh, I've got it right here. Thanks. Fifth thing I've learned, being in Bitcoin, money is a tool, right? Time savings, to generate time savings, is the purpose of every tool. The reason I use a shovel to dig a hole is because I can dig more shovels per hour than I can with my hands, right? Tools give us wealth by saving us time and satisfying our wants. Money is a tool used to calculate, negotiate, and execute trades more quickly. And as we said earlier, the entrepreneurial strategy of creating wealth is trade. So if we trade with one another more efficiently, we create more wealth. That is the purpose, one of the purposes of money. So money accomplishes this by putting everything in a common language. So instead of saying, this house cost 11 cars, I say, this house costs $440,000, and these cars are $40,000 each, right? It's a common language of numeracy. It's easy to understand. So money is something like literacy and numeracy in a way, and that we put it in our mind and think through it more often than we think about it, actually. And it lets us increase wealth through trade. It lets us store that wealth, which is something money's supposed to do, not that it does so well today. And it also lets us express the value of wealth in prices. Which takes me to the next thing I learned being in Bitcoin, and that is that money is not a government creation. We all grew up, I think, thinking that it was, because we've always just had paper in our pockets, it's government issued, in God we trust, et cetera, but that's not how we got money. Money arises naturally once we started to engage in trade. Once we figured out, hey, working together, we're more wealthy than we are working in isolation. As we started to trade, the thing that became most tradable, right, the most liquid asset, that is by definition money. So the common example is, like, you may have heard of people in prison trading cigarettes as currency. That's just the most liquid asset in that little trade network. So cigarettes become money naturally. And it's basically this course of people trying to satisfy their wants, right? You're trying to trade this thing for something more tradable to get to the object you ultimately desire. And in that process, something necessarily becomes most tradable. Whatever that is, that's money. Simple as that. Sounds simple. There's a lot more to it, and there's a reason we selected gold, but we'll get into that later. And although there never seems to be enough money, one thing we've learned a lot repeatedly throughout history is that printing money does not work. Sounds like an easy solution. There's not enough of it. Print more of it. What's the problem with that? Brings me to the next thing I learned by being in Bitcoin, and a lot of people really like this one. Inflation is legalized counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is criminalized inflation. They are the same thing. There is no difference. Given a choice, every rational human would prefer to hold a money that cannot be counterfeited, cannot be inflated, because that would give you the maximal ability to preserve wealth across time, because no one else could dilute you, right? So that's pretty obvious. And as it turns out, inflation resistance is one of the main reasons gold was chosen as money historically. And if you've listened to my show, you've probably heard me talk about this ad nauseum, so I'll try to go fast. No matter how hard we try to produce gold, we just can't produce it more quickly. It's the hardest asset to produce in human history, hardest commodity to produce. And for a number of other reasons, it became money, right? We all understand intuitively gold is valuable. Very few of us understand why. There's a deep history there, been around for 5,000 years. Take me at my word today, gold is money. But here's the problem with gold. Gold lacks portability. It's hard to move across space, right? It's heavy. It's expensive to secure. It's cumbersome. You can't transact in it easily. So what did we do? We're humans. We're entrepreneurs. We figured it out. Hey, let's just put all this gold in one place and issue a paper token redeemable for gold, and we'll trade this paper, which is much easier to transact, as if it were as good as gold. Problem solved. Gold's portable. What's the problem with that? We introduce the need to trust human beings with our gold, holding our money, right? You say you have 1,000 ounces on reserve. Do you actually? Or did you just print more paper and tell me you do and traded some of it out or loaned it out? So we introduced counterparty risk in the form of the currency issuer, which ultimately became the bank, and today is the central bank. And that is why central banking, again, if inflation and counterfeiting are the same thing, central banking is a giant currency counterfeiting operation. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but I think if you study the history, you'll see it to be true. Now I'll mention Bitcoin here. Bitcoin's really important. Why? Because Bitcoin's the only money in history with 0% unexpected inflation. 0. 21 million, that's it. No one can do anything about it. It's the only fixed supply asset we've ever had, which is to say it's the only asset in human history 100% counterfeit proof. It cannot be counterfeited whatsoever. Staggering. It's a staggering invention. And so Bitcoin optimizes our ability to preserve wealth over time by virtue of being immune to inflation.